What's going on, everybody? My name is Jack Kelly, host of Point to the Spot, a US-based podcast focused on the world of football. Joining me today, as always, my entirely bonkers friend, Reed Hammond, who seems to be enjoying a jar of applesauce and fucking up my audio. Just kidding, he was opening a beer. Reed, how are you?
Good, how are you?
You're drinking Heineken, you just lost your rights. Also joining the show tonight, future presidential candidate, Ball for Prez 2020. I can't stand Donald Trump's America. Andrew Ball. Andrew, live from the swamp. You met Vice President Mike Pence briefly. You saw him in person. How are things in D.C., my friend?
Wild as always.
How excited are you for the CBO score?
It came out.
The CBO score came in.
Yeah, I know. Like, how is it? What's everybody doing?
I pretty much wait.
Is it melting?
You'll be shocked to know that like every senator I tried to grab in the hallway today was not having it over the CBO.
Did you get body slammed yet or no?
So the thing that blows my mind about that story is like if you spend – I've been doing this for 3 hours, okay? Already like if you're in Congress, you just have to deal with reporters stalking you.
Yeah.
It's like part of the job.
It's just a thing.
So if you lose your shit now, it's not good. Not a good look. You know, regardless of what party you belong to, I hope we can agree on that. We're here to talk about football.
And with that said, that's also 100% assault. But yeah, on to the football.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, there was a major European Cup final tonight.
Over his hot takes.
How major you want it to be, that is completely up to you. It's decently important. The winner gets to go to the Champions League. It's not exactly top quality. Top quality sides. We had Ajax squaring off against Manchester United in Europa League final. Tonight, game is being played in Stockholm. It was bustling, very crowded. Game was sold out. Good support for both sides. It was about 50-50. I know there were a lot of things flying about. I read a story from The Guardian about how flights skyrocketed for flying from Manchester and flying from Amsterdam to get to Sweden. Ticket prices went way up as soon as this game ended. Really deference to they still made it out. Good. Boring is sin match overall. We'll talk a little bit more in depth in a minute. I'll just give you the run through. Paul Pogba, I guess he scored. I'm not sure that the shot he had released was going to be on target. Took a wicked deflection. Paul Pogba scored in the 18th minute. And then in the 48th minute, Mkhitaryan did a little bit of his inner Zlatan with a funky overhead flick kind of goal with his foot into the back of the net. It kind of came out of nothing. It was a set piece, kind of bounced around, and Ajax had very much been on the front foot going into this, lots of possession, creating some decent chances. United was very happy to sit back. Onana, the goalkeeper for Ajax, was really impressive tonight. One person that I was extremely disappointed by was Dolberg for Ajax tonight. He has been one of the more impressive players in the tournament. Didn't really get it done. Traore looked good. I'm sure Conte was maybe looking at this match tonight if he wasn't too busy prepping for the Cup final on Saturday. Overall, boring as hell. Reed, you saw this match. It was boring. Why was it so boring? What did you make of the whole Europa League final? It was nothing like Liverpool versus Sevilla of last season.
No, it really wasn't, and that's why United came out top. It's Jose Mourinho doesn't play good football. It's not what he does. But he wins you trophies, and you know what I mean. And that's why we're gonna get into this in a little bit about how neither you nor Andrew think this United side would do anything in the Champions League, and whether or not the additions in the summer will drastically improve that, of which I think they will. In that, the old Barcelona sides would, Xavi would be the hub getting the team bustling. This United side, it's like Mourinho is the hub in the center of the park getting everything bustling. He is the entire team. Which is why I'm dubious about Conte's Chelsea side next year, because there are very intricate roles within that team that allow for a beautiful system and great, safe but attractive football. Whereas United's, there are not like you can like we even had Darmian playing left back today when he's naturally a right back. It's not about the personnel. It's about how Mourinho sets you up and what he tells you to do. And that's what happened today. If you said it was a 2-2, it was a 2-0, win in the Europa League final, that sounds like when you read the Wikipedia page of this in 5 years, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that must have been a fine game. When really it was really dreadful. It was an awful game to watch because it was just one side nicking goals at the start of the halves and then sitting back. But that's what Mourinho gets you. So it's definitely a trade-off, but I think it's definitely something that needs to be feared.
I mean, we can get into this in a moment. I know, Andrew, you didn't get to catch the match.
Not live, but I do have a couple remarks.
Yeah, feel free.
So this is less like on the match itself because like Jose Mourinho plays boring football, and like I don't know that we need to go into super in depth on Jose Mourinho playing boring football because everyone kind of knows that. But like I think this gets at kind of the identity crisis Manchester United are in right now because fans and the team. I don't think it's a bad team at all. I just don't think they're built to teams in Europe right now, which we'll get into in a second, I'm sure. But their fans are all being like, oh, United won 2 trophies this year. They're back. They're a big club. And like by definition, by winning the Europa League, you are not a big club.
I disagree. Well, let me come back. Well, hold on.
That's
First off,
literally beat all the teams that were not good enough for Champions League.
West Ham was in the Europa League qualification.
First off, hear this out. They won 3 trophies. They also won a Community Shield.
Oh my God!
So they won
the fucking Community.
They won the Liverpool treble.
Community Shield,
as I call it. But no, like what I'm trying to say is, you guys are spoiled. So no, even if Spurs won the Europa League, right? You would say Spurs are now an emerging side in the top echelons of Europe. Or if West Ham won a Europa League title, you would say, oh wow, West Ham are becoming a European force. Jack's shaking his head, but when Arsenal win the Europa League next year and finish 7th, he's gonna be like, yeah, the Europa League, Hope Cup. You know what I mean? So be as dubious as you like, but from the outside looking in, it's a good indication, if nothing else. People poo-poo the Europa League, but it's not an easy competition to win.
No, not at all.
Would you consider Leicester City a big club now?
No, because that's an aberration.
The same freaking narrative.
Literally not. It's literally not, though.
If West Ham won the Europa League, I would still not consider them to be a big club.
Can I make my point without being interrupted?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, like, and this isn't to take anything away from United because they played well. And, like, I mean, partially that's because Jose put all his eggs in that basket because he was left with no other option. But, like, I mean, they earned that the title. I mean, like, you can't take that away from them. There's a cognitive dissonance here. You either get to proclaim United is a big club or you get to, like, use this Europa League victory as proof that they're like this emerging side. Like Reed said, you can't get both. Those are 2 separate narratives. And you have to pick one. And if they're a big club, even though they won Europa and even though they won trophies, and like again, not to take that away from them because Spurs didn't, and Arsenal didn't, and West Ham didn't. Arsenal might, but,
not yet.
Yeah, not yet. But like, I don't know. Winning Europa does not mesh with the ambitions that a quote-unquote big club should have, in my view. That's, again, not to poo-poo Europa. I've made enough self-deprecating jokes about Spurs in Europa. I think you all should know that I treat great deference.
Yeah.
But, like, this is just more my problem with the fans. I don't think that it's necessarily a problem with United. But I think it gets to, like, the identity problem they have. Because I think now we're going to firmly move into could United compete in Champions League, and I don't think they could with this current roster. They had a losing record against top 4 sides in the EPL, and those teams aren't even the top teams in Europe. I mean, that's not even getting to Bayern, Real, Monaco, Atletico, the best teams in Europe this year. I think that Mourinho's style very clearly did not consistently work in a way that would allow them to achieve progress in the Champions League against elite sides in the EPL, much less in Europe. That's my belief.
What I was trying to say with the, if a team like West Ham won the Europa League, is that I was trying to use it to show the significance of Europa League.
Good points, well taken.
United is definitely, without a doubt, a side above or past the Europa League. You know what I mean? But
I think we're on the same page. I think we're just making
without a doubt. And I think Jack's just being difficult because when isn't he?
Retweet.
I think, I disagree that Jose Mourinho's United couldn't get it done in the Champions League. I think it would drag down their league form significantly because Jose Mourinho. I think this match shows it.
Down from finishing 6th.
Yeah,
it couldn't fall that much farther, man.
Then you'd be at the Everton level, and that's just shit.
Yeah, man. At Eric. Well, I'm just trying to use this Europa League final as it's kind of like a test that Mourinho aced. You know what I mean? He studied really hard. He put his head to it. Knuckles to the grindstone, or however that expression goes. And he really proved nose to the grindstone. Thank you. I am not an actual American. I'm a Russian plant.
To the NSA listening in on this podcast, Reed is not actually a Russian plant.
But yeah, I think it was a beautiful tactical performance. It was very similar to the Chelsea game when he had Chelsea at home, where he just set up a side that he knew would get the job done, and they played shit football, but it was very effective at mitigating the threats. Off in the pre-production meeting, me and Jack were having a little bit of about Traore, who was bursting forward into the box and doing very well with his movement. But no matter how good your movement is and how good the supply is, when there's 6 United players enveloping you, one of them's going to get to it. And that's just a tactical discipline and defensive solubility that isn't down to one player. It's down to Mourinho setting up a great side ready to win a cup final.
Okay, but what if
there are a few teams?
What if that's Messi?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, but that shows the gap between where United is now and where they need to be.
Okay, but if it's Messi, there are a few people who can stop Messi in the box.
Okay, but you're saying that United could, if you're saying that they could compete in Champions League.
No, I'm saying they could compete. I'm not saying they're going to win it hands down, but I don't think they would get swamped. I think they would be fine. They're not going to get into the semifinals, but they're going to do respectable. They're going to at worst pull an Arsenal. That's just what I'm trying to get across. I think this side is much better than they performed, and I just don't see this season as reflective of the side. I think we're gonna. I think not a lot of additions going to come to this side in the summer. Well, with that said, they're going to spend $1 billion, but not a lot of actual good is going to be put into the side, and it's still going to do significantly better.
So there's several things of this sentiment that it is very much a way that you think about and approach the game, and is fine, and I don't think that way. This idea that tactical masterclass wins you a competition and is the best way to win a competition is not. It's 50% true. A perfect example of this, before you yell at me, is Massimiliano Allegri, the Juventus manager, who is the least Italian soccer coach of all time, in the sense that he does not have an insane structured game plan like a Jose Mourinho or an Antonio Conte does. he picks the best 11 players, and he's an amazing scout and is really good at evaluating. He picks the players for the way he wants them on the field and puts them out there and let them do it. And obviously we're seeing the success of Juventus. I mean, 6 seasons in a row they've won Serie A. I know a couple of those were under Conte, but he has since taken over. I mean, they're going to be in their second Champions League final in 3 seasons. I don't think that like this idea of like tactical masterclass is the entire thing. I think the person that drove Manchester United this year and rightfully won their club player of the season was Ander Herrera. He was also very good again today. And I think that of Jose Mourinho's style where everybody's packed in, I think Ander Herrera was so successful is because he did not have a role, in a sense that he was told to go and play football. And some days that meant defending more. Some days that meant creating. Some days that meant supporting the wing. I don't think that is a system that works in the Champions League because there's only one of them. Even Pogba had a very specific role in this team, and like overall, I think had a pretty disappointing season. He played well in the Europa League. Well, that's good for him. They won the trophy, back in the CL. But I think that this team, the style they play with the personnel they have and the things they need to change, seeing that they're going to lose David De Gea. I mean, they can spend $1 bajillion getting Antoine Griezmann, but that doesn't do anything to address the fact that they really lack defensive players. Marcus Rojo, not the guy that you want leading your 3 in the back against a side like Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. So I think like this tactical masterclass that you've talked about, and Jose Mourinho did so well with a club like Chelsea won the Champions League with them, is not something that he's going to be able to do again unless he spends £200 million to buy 2 defenders, a new goalkeeper, a striker, a winger. There's a lot of things that need addressing, and he needs a lot more talent to make it function. Because even in the sense like pulling an Arsenal is getting out of your group, and even though it does a lot on the draw, and like Monaco really surprised people, and Leverkusen was a lot better than we thought. Like a team like Tottenham, which is mountains better than Manchester United right now, in terms of talent, in terms of tactics. I mean, Pochettino has been one of the best tactical managers of the year, managed to get knocked out of the Champions League, and since they are such a tactically strong side and have so much talent and got knocked out, I think that's telling that Manchester United would not compete. I don't even know if they'd make it out of the group at this point.
Just real quick, what came to mind when you talked about Allegri was actually Zidane, and how I have a long touted Zidane's actually not that great of a manager. He's just a good man manager kind of stance. Where what really is almost interesting is that what I'm kind of getting from this conversation is that at the top level, maybe the best kind of management is just having spectacular players and letting them play, because that's kind of what Real do. That's essentially not exactly what Juventus does, because I think week by week what is asked of each player changes, because we saw Dani Alves one Champions League week bombing forward and being player of the match, and then the other one sitting back and playing an extraordinary defensive performance against Mbappe. But I think that Jose Mourinho, I don't think the game that he plays, I don't think it's as stringent upon personnel as you do. I think a lot of shifting could go on into that side, and the general core, the general idea that he's trying to get across and play would be fine. Like, I don't think it's particularly personnel dependent, as I continue to say that Chelsea side is. And it's kind of more like that Tottenham side, where even when we had Trippier and Ben Davies and whoever filling in the back, it still worked out pretty well. I would say the only player on that Tottenham side that's irreplaceable is Moussa Dembele, because there's not really another player like him. But in the end, we'll see. In the end, that since they won the Europa League final, we'll find out if they can do it in the Champions League. And I just want to place my bets now that they will.
I mean, you're kind of talking about Zidane. Yeah, you're talking about Zidane and how they do this and they pick their free-flowing. I mean, I'd hate to, I don't want to throw in teams it's kind of a similar way that Bayern plays, similar way, not as successfully that Arsenal plays, that, a lot of teams like to play this way that consider themselves the top teams in Europe, making the Champions League constantly. If Ferguson when Sir Alex Ferguson was the manager of Manchester United, it was a very free-flowing. He picked the best 11, and they went out and played, but he it was very free-flowing. It's not structured like it is now, and that's when they were most successful, and they were winning Champions League finals, and they were winning the Premier League. I don't think that Jose Mourinho is the person with the personnel to take them back to that level. I think they need, in a lot of ways, besides a person like Paul Pogba, need like a revamp of that. It's been a lot of Band-Aids the last couple of seasons. Even some extent, Ibrahimovic was a Band-Aid because he's ancient. And so I think that, I don't think they will be competitive because this summer they're just poised to make nothing but more Band-Aid signings.
And I think this summer will be a referendum on the difference between you guys' arguments about whether or not Manchester United relies on very specific roles, because I think there will be a lot of turnover. And you mentioned Band-Aids, Jack, and I think that's true. There's only so much you can do with some of those David Moyes era buys, that are still around. And at some point, things are going to have to shake out a little more. I think this summer, definitively how we think United's going to do in the Champions League. I think the personnel is going to be very different, and I think that will either hinder or boost Mourinho's ability to implement that style effectively when he was managing Champions League winning sides in the past.
Yeah, well, I just think it's kind of, in the end, it kind of boils down to the difference between, the Galactico Real or the, Javi Iniesta Barcelona, or even, the old school Juventus or the, even Simeone's Atletico when they were at their highest. That very tactically structured, very disciplined, very cohesive sides, or even a Jurgen Klopp who plays a little bit more openly, but with a very, very clear identity to his team. I just find that those sides are generally less strictly personnel dependent, because even if Marcelo strains his calf the week before this week, that's going to radically change the way that Real Madrid side work together. And I'm liking to believe, because I'm an ideologue, that in the long term, good identity tactics win out in the end. But, Jack's extraordinarily correct that over the last couple of years, that's not what we've seen. So, yeah, we'll see. We will find out next summer or next August.
It begs the question: are Manchester United? I don't believe so.
Anyways, guys, we're gonna take a short break. When we come back, we're gonna do a little bit more discussion about not only Ajax as a good young team with some question marks, losing a lot of players to loan, but also a little bit more about the structure of the Champions League, and a little bit with the Eredivisie's losing their automatic qualification spot, stuff like that. So when we come back, we're gonna talk about that. Enjoy the music.
I think this final loss will be huge for a lot of those players.
Well, the winners both have to qualify now. The first place in the Eredivisie and the second place in the Eredivisie both have to qualify.
Well, good. It's a shit league. It's like the 10th best league in Europe.
It's ranked 13th according to UEFA.
I don't know about that.
Even worse.
Yeah,
no, because it's literally, if you put Burnley in place of Ajax, nothing's changing in that table.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean.
You know what I mean? Everything besides Feyenoord, PSV, and Ajax are literally dog shit. And Ajax, PSV, and Feyenoord are just, West Brom.
And even Feyenoord have been kind of shit until this season, when they had a really kind of crazy run.
Yeah, well, it's kind of been Ajax always, and then PSV or Feyenoord switching out.
Yeah,
because back in the Depay PSV days, they looked unstoppable.
They were so good. Okay, just to give you an idea of how it works now, to be a club league that gains automatic qualification to the Champions League, your league has to be within the UEFA coefficient ranking. You have to be in the top 10. So since the Netherlands dropped to 13, they no longer can have a team qualify automatically. So the first team, final round of qualification, and the second place, the round before.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funky, and then third place goes automatically to the Europa League.
UEFA coefficient is bullshit, and literally no one has any idea how it works.
Oh, the
No
Europa
one has any ideas what it's worked, but I'm very familiar with it because of Football Manager. Because it's not it's not like the Netherlands national team.
Their fourth spot a couple years ago. Last year? Is that it was last year.
Who?
England almost lost the fourth qualifying spot.
Yeah, it was close because no one was getting it done in Europe. No one was getting it done in the Champions League.
English teams are shit in Europe.
Yeah, and that's basically how they judge it. It's how well your league does.
Yeah. Okay, we're coming back in 5.
Think of 4. Okay. Okay, Jack.
Dick.
What were you saying?
Whatever. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to part 2 of the show, everybody. As I mentioned, we're going to be discussing a little bit about the Champions League, about Ajax in particular, and a little bit about the Dutch league as a whole. Reed, you are, the acclaimed football manager on the pod. Ajax has got a lot of good young talent. Also have a lot of good young talent that they have only because they were on loan to the club. Seeing as how the Eredivisie has dropped out of the top 10 in the UEFA coefficient rankings, what this means is that they no longer can have a team automatically qualify for the Champions League. Both Feyenoord and Ajax, who finished 1 and 2 in the Eredivisie this year, are going to have to qualify for the Champions League come August when qualification is going on, and they have lost a lot of their good talent because it's going home to their parent club on loan. Are you at all concerned about Ajax's chance of making it into the Champions League when they have to enter into that entering in the qualifying rounds?
Not at all. I think they'll end up in the Europa League eventually. Again, if not out of Europe entirely. But Ajax over the last couple of years have really been a next one up kind of a side. They if they don't look in their own backyard, they look around the league. Like there's a couple of those old FC Twente players that are in that side, like the young Moroccan and a couple others that are scattered. So I don't think it's going to be particularly devastating when all of those boys go home, but it's hard to replace someone like Traoré. He's an extraordinary talent, not a lot like him out in there right now.
I'm waiting for Chelsea just to absolutely blow his world-class talent.
Oh, yeah, of course. He's going to turn into the next Wilfred Boney, just growing moss on the bench. But, my eyes do always light up when I see that, fifth star is black. So there's definitely a lot coming out of this side. I just don't know if, I don't know if they're going to realize this talent and this potential at Ajax. Like, it's not really that hot of a take. And I think the most substantive thing that could come out of this final loss is not for Ajax, but for these young players who, with all likelihood will be not at Ajax within the next 5 years, and how this loss at such a young age will, I'm sure for some players perhaps skirt some world-class talent and, kind of make them lose it. And for others, definitely, push them on and make them into the world beaters that they can be. So I'm really excited to look back in a couple of years and see, I think this is going to be one of those games that people look back on and say, oh yeah, that kid was part of that young Ajax side that lost to United in the Europa League. Like this is going to be a starting 11, starting 18 that people look back at as like a reference point. I think it's going to be something definitely to watch the next couple of years, and it's kind of like Yuri Tielemans, Football Manager icon. Sure, Andrew's heard the name, who just completed his much made move to Monaco it was like 25 million euros, a great deal for Monaco. Monaco with another steal. Yeah, definitely unfair.
Elite young player. I mean, like it.
Yeah, he's arguably one of the top 50, 25 midfielders in the world right now at the age of, I think he's 21, turning 22 this year.
Oh, if not top 10. I mean,
Oh, that's a hot take.
well,
But
it depends what you mean by young.
yeah, and it also depends on what I mean by midfielder. But, you
Are
know,
we talking about Dele Alli young or like young?
we're talking like PFA Young Player of the Year young.
We talking Rob Holding young?
We're talking Rob
Oh,
Holding
okay.
young. We're talking
Okay.
Reese Oxford young. You know, we're talking Deacon Rice. Shout out to my boy. Peace. Made that debut in the 90th minute. Caught those 4 minutes of stoppage time. What? Ireland call up. Nonetheless, it's going to be interesting just to watch, you know, this 18 and how they spread their wings across Europe, because they will. Oh man, it's definitely going to be something really interesting to watch.
And I'll bring you back in now to get your thoughts. First and foremost, I know you hate the UEFA coefficient. Do you think that it should, do we need these standards? I know, like, in this instance, it is something, you know, you can get a storied club like PSV or Ajax or Feyenoord out of the Dutch league, won European Cups, shaking things up before. How do you, I guess we'll start there. What do you make of the UEFA coefficient dictating these kind of things?
So, I mean, part of my problem with the UEFA coefficient, so I'm a journalist, right? I'm a big fan of transparency. Like the Audi Power Index, no one has any idea how it works. And obviously it's tied into how well your team's doing in Europe, which is fine, but you think about it, certain leagues at the expense of others, and it comes at the expense of the Dutch league, whose teams, with the exception of Ajax this year, really have done fair to middling, and definitely in the Champions League and in Europa League to a lesser extent. For the very top leagues, differentiating between, Serie A and the EPL like we had last year, it kind of makes sense, to use European performance, because your English teams are being consistently bad in Europe and Italian teams were not. But for the lesser leagues, when you're getting down into the Dutch league and the Portuguese league and the Ukrainian league and what have you, these teams are not going to be competing for the Champions League title. They might be competing, as they did today, for the Europa League title, but top levels. And just there are so few teams involved in the European competitions from those leagues, and there are so many things that make up what a good league is that are hard to quantify. And I get we have to use something. Was what actually goes into this half-baked coefficient. I don't know. It just strikes me as kind of a well-intentioned yet needed. It needs improvement. I think it's well-intentioned because we need something, but it needs improvements in certain regards to kind of rope in the totality of what makes a league, especially for these mid-tier European leagues, which are kind of on some level the same in terms of quality, not in terms of style of play or history or whatnot, but in terms of quality. We need to, I think, be thinking about other factors, because leagues in the Dutch league is a great example. Does have ebbs and they ebb and flow, in terms of how good they are. So,
yeah, I mean,
yeah, no, I think. Well, I don't think it's a terrible system and a terrible thing. I think if nothing else, it's just a number that needs some transparency behind it as to how they reached it. And I'm sure there is a way. They're not just throwing darts at a dartboard. You know what I mean?
No, they're not. And
but it would be nice to know.
But UEFA is so shady, sometimes you wonder. No, and I don't think it's the devil, and I don't think it. I mean, again, you need some objective standard, but it takes time, I think, for the changes in the league quality to catch up with the coefficient. And by that time, there may have been a whole new set of players coming into these teams, these elite teams. So just there's kind of a disconnect there where it doesn't quite adequately reflect the power structure in Europe, I don't think. And it's hard to argue that the Eredivisie really is getting the shaft in this. I alluded to earlier, and and also just like the general quality of the league is not very good, compared to the top 4 or 5 leagues. But, just in general, on principle, I think more needs to be done on transparency. Jack, sorry, I cut you off earlier.
No, that's totally okay. I appreciate your point about transparency. I think that's something that, especially in today's world, always needs to be there. Speaking of transparency, we are out of things to talk about for today. So we're going to wrap up the show, guys. Thank you all very much for listening. Be on the lookout within the next week or so. We are going to be having a bonus pod coming out about Reed and Andrew's trip. Well, I guess Andrew's trip to Milwaukee to see the professional soccer franchise in Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Torrent. They play in the NPSL. We've gotten a lot of interesting. They got a lot of interesting perspective, and that'll be coming at you within hopefully the next few days. I know they're super excited about that. I know Reed is also super excited to share with you where you can find him on what he likes to call the social. Reed, where can they find you? Where can they find you on Twitter, my friend?
At that one kid who just knocked over a glass with his foot.
I think that fits in the character limit.
And Andrew, where can they find you?
At Andrew Ball, BAHL. I will also add, for more bonus pod fun next week, our good friend Cesar Hernandez will be back on the show to talk all things Liga MX roundup.
Breaking down the Clausura and La Guia.
Look at Jack with that high school Spanish.
Whoa, I took it in college too. Don't discredit me. Of course, guys, you can find me on Twitter at actual Jack Kelly. I am actually Jack Kelly after all. Andrew, where can they find the show on Twitter?
At Point to the Spot with the numeral 2.
And also, guys, if you like the show, we like the show. If you like the show, you should go to iTunes and you should leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. Really helps us out in terms of, kind of getting the Point to the Spot brand out there. I know you hear that on every podcast, but, give it a go. Until next time, guys, that is all we have. We will see you on Sunday, and I may or may not be there depending on Saturday's match. But until then, have a great rest of the week.